All right, Sam, thanks for making some time for us this morning. Let's start with the player that's fresh on everyone's mind, four-star Shamar Easter. Arkansas now has 2 tight end recruits in the 2023 class. What can you tell us about Shamar and how highly was he coveted, not just across Arkansas, but across the SEC?
Yeah, Shamar is he's a new age tight end, kind of that flex tight end. I mean, for Ashdown, he'll line up in line, he'll line up as a receiver. He kind of does it all, but he's every bit of about 6'5". He's a skinny kid, so he's going to put on muscle when he gets to Arkansas. He worked out at a number of different places over this offseason when things opened up. A lot of schools wanted to see what he looked like in person and see, how he looked against top competition, and I think he really impressed them. He's a triple sport athlete, track and field. He's on the relay teams. You can see that when he runs downfield. He's a long strider. He's also a basketball player. You can see that on the receiving end. He's so smooth, so natural, and I think he has a case to be the number one player in the state of Arkansas. He already is that for 2023, and he might be up there if you count the 2022 class as well, the seniors. He was coveted. I know that he visited a lot of SEC and national schools this summer. The Clemson offer was one I know he was waiting on. That was not yet. They had not yet offered him. But I know he was really impressed by Ole Miss, by Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama really blew him away. But honestly, whenever he got back home, he always made his way back to Fayetteville. And Dow Loggins was essential to Shamar's recruitment. They connected, and the fact that he's a tight ends coach, it kind of worked out perfectly for Arkansas, and Sam Pittman had made Shamar a top priority, and it kind of worked out really perfectly for Shamar and Arkansas to work that out.
Sam, when you look at Arkansas and what they've done the last couple of years, they're slowly progressing in the right direction. They had a top 30-ish class on Rivals the first year in Sam Pittman, not a full year. Last year, they were well within, I think, the top 25, and this year they might have a top 20. What do they need to continue to do to progress in the right direction?
I mean, there are some obvious things that any coaching staff can take advantage of. For one, they're in the SEC, and they have a fantastic head coach and a really good coaching staff. So that's their first and foremost thing to take care of. You got Sam Pittman has a ton of energy. He's got a really young staff with a lot of good NFL experience on the staff, but also young coaches, which are able to help them go out and recruit as well as they have been doing. The next step is trying to put together a product on the field to try to sell to these kids. If you're Oklahoma or Ohio State, it's really easy to sell your offense to receivers and quarterbacks. And, I think Kendall Briles he's been assembling that quarterback room. He's got some really talented pass catchers on board for, the 2022 class, 2023, and who they signed last year. It's just all about progressing and showing the progress to those kids who are between Arkansas and a handful of other schools. And, if they make noise in the SEC, and I think that they have enough talent on that roster. And like I said, the coaches with NFL backgrounds have been coaching for a good amount of time. I think the product on the field from Arkansas is going to surprise a lot of people this year. And I think that'll pay dividends on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, Sam, we've been looking at, kind of what the future looks like. If the Big 12 goes away at some point, as some, projected will with Texas and Oklahoma's move, where's Arkansas's opening to improve recruiting? I was just looking at the 23 numbers, and the top 300 players, 47 of the top 300 in the 23 class are in Texas, 15 of the top 60. You look at Florida, they got 11 of the top 100. So, I guess, is Arkansas's opening, if the Big 12 does diminish once Texas and Oklahoma go away and those schools disperse and go elsewhere, trying to pick up some of those other players in Texas? What's the best path for Arkansas to consistently be a top 15, top 20 national recruiting program?
Well, if you want to recruit Texas, if you want to recruit Louisiana, you want to recruit the schools around Arkansas, they have stiff tests. It's not an easy task. It's not easy to go into Texas and beat out Steve Sarkisian and the way that they're recruiting and that staff that he put together with a lot of former Alabama coaches. They're used to having success that, they have to prove a lot on the field, and I think a lot of people are going to have eyes on that. But, Texas has a lot of power as a university, and the same goes for Oklahoma. So to come into the state of Texas and recruit against Texas A&M, against Oklahoma, TCU, Texas Tech, SMU is recruiting as like a Power 5 team. That's going to be a lofty task. And Arkansas has, what they've been doing is kind of going into these neighboring states and trusting their own evaluations, which are proving to be, correct as we're seeing on the field. They've dipped into Louisiana in the past. They've dipped into Oklahoma in the past. Because of Sam Pittman's connections to Georgia, they've dipped into Georgia. And, talented states like Georgia and Florida have enough talent where if you get to, you can get some of the top guys, some of the middle tier guys, they're all good players, even in deep states. I just see, I see this SEC domination because you look at the programs that are going to be under this bubble, and you're going to have the Alabamas and Georgias and Floridas recruiting with the Texases, Oklahomas, and LSUs of the world, and it's all the best players are going to be under one conference. That's just how it looks. With the exceptions of the Florida states and the Ohio states and USCs of the world, but I'm not really sure where this is heading from an entire college football conference landscape angle, but from recruiting, it definitely levels the playing field for Oklahoma and Texas that have been getting edged out by Bama and Georgia and A&M over the last couple of cycles because that SEC bias is going to be eliminated. I just think that's more competition for Arkansas for some of those same guys, but if Pittman's savvy, as he's shown to be, he'll find guys in crazy parts of the South, and they'll turn out to be pretty decent players, as we've seen with Shamar.
In the new coming SEC with Texas and Oklahoma, which state from a recruiting standpoint is going to be the most fertile or the most important in the SEC footprint? Will it be Florida or will it be Texas long-term, in your opinion?
It's a toss-up because, on a given cycle, in 2022, Texas is extremely top-heavy. I think there's between 40 and 50, I have the number somewhere, of kids ranked in the Rivals 250 for 2022, and almost a fifth of them are from the state of Texas. If you look to the Rivals 250 for 2023, Florida is the substantial leader over Texas. So it definitely shifts and varies from cycle to cycle. But you're looking at Texas, Georgia, Florida, and even Louisiana to a degree, and Alabama. All these states are 20 to 30 players deep with Power 5 talent at least. So you're going to be, Texas is going to be chopped up between Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and LSU, and you're going to go down to Florida, and you're going to have Florida versus, and Florida State and Miami are still going to recruit against Georgia and Alabama. I mean, these races are just going to get tighter and tighter, and there's going to be less to differentiate between SEC teams when they're all in the same conference.
Sam Spiegelman with us here on the Morning Rush, national recruiting analyst and expert at Rivals. Sam, I think Arkansas football, high school particularly, it is looked at in the SEC as just way lower than everyone else. How does the state of Arkansas improve its high school recruiting rankings year after year?
That's a loaded question for sure, but I don't know if it's necessarily as much as it's viewed in any sort of way or through any sort of lens that it's inferior by any means. I've never been to an Arkansas prep game. I've watched a lot of Arkansas football tape, and probably the thing that stands out to me is maybe there's less certainty about the level of competition that you line up to on a Friday night. So for me, if I'm watching Shamar Easter's tape and he dominates, when you watch Shamar Easter, he is the best player on the field on any given Friday night, unless you're playing a certain team that's got, Amarion Harris or Isaiah Sategna, some of these teams with multiple Power 5 kids, I think the biggest thing is when these kids from Arkansas, because of where they're located, just above Texas and Louisiana, I think they just need to come to some more national events where they can put their best against other best, and they can kind of say, like, I always had this theory, if you dominate on high school, I don't care if you're playing private school at the 1A level or public school at the 7A level. If you dominate, then you dominate. Mm-hmm. But if you take them out of that setting and put them in a different setting, will that continue, or will they kind of fold and buckle under pressure? So someone like Shamar is, he dominates on Friday night. The context was then putting him in Atlanta and then Dallas, and let him go against DBs and linebackers and safeties from different parts of the country. And we really got a good feel for how good Shamar is, and he's obviously a top 100 player. And, hopefully we catch him on a Friday night before he signs the papers to go to Arkansas. But, if you dominate, you dominate. It's as simple as that. It's still high school football. These traits translate. And each year, you know, Arkansas has more or less talent. This 2022 class is pretty loaded in Arkansas. It's very top-heavy with, I believe, 4 4-stars from the state for 2022, and Shamar is the only 4-star for 2023. But, you know, some years are just a little bit more fruitful with talent than others.
Sam, we really appreciate your time this morning. Sam Spiegelman, national recruiting analyst for Rivals. We really appreciate it, man. Hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up with you at some point if Arkansas continues to get top-tier kids.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout-out to my mama. She's a big fan of y'all. That's Greg Brooks Jr.'s grandma, and she's a big fan. I just wanted to say hi to her.
You know, the start of the season is just around the corner, and if you're into sports betting, Bet Online is where you should go to win some money today. Whether it's live bets during games or future bets on who you think will win the championship, Bet Online has all the latest odds, news, and information for all your online sports betting needs. Visit the website today or use your mobile device to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So before the next big game or before the season starts, head on over to Bet Online and start playing today. That's Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts.